It's
Oh
just
yeah, yeah.
it's just changed. Now I've got it recording.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sometimes I don't know why it does that. Sometimes like on the bottom, it you have to click more when most of those emojis or reactions are. Let me see something. Oh yeah, that's pretty cool. You didn't know that you could do that,
No,
huh?
I don't know how to do any of this stuff. I have to
I know
ask
on
you
the
how to
re
change the camera angle because whenever I record this, it has me talking, then it comes on to you, then back to me.
no, it's under reactions. See that. And but you can use these, right? And this is what I was trying to tell you. As we get more people on here, we can have bigger discussions. You know what I'm saying? And you'll learn. But yeah, we can start whenever you want to, man.
No worries, bro. Well, I guess I'll give you question one. I was going to see if you could describe some of the Sumerian gods and their roles.
Well, and this is just depending on what translations you go off, who you go off of, right? And the reason why I say that is because for like let's say for we're gonna go with Anu, the first one, right? He is considered the Almighty Anunnaki God. He's the one that's in charge, right? And actually, from what I understand from reading different books and stuff, from Samuel Noah Kramer to Andrew George, to from the ETCSL and stuff like that, um, Anunnaki is actually derived from Anu's name. That's from what I understand. Okay, from different people, of course. I don't know how true that is, how accurate that is, but it kind of makes sense because um, we don't know exactly where the Anunnaki came from. We just know they're a group of individuals, and we know people who were from royalty. Back then, they were came from that royalty's name. You know what I mean? So it just makes sense. All the individuals that fell under Anu were considered the Anunnaki. Well, it's just interesting how they put it together and stuff like that. But so you have Anu, then you have Enki, then you have Enlil, you have Ninhursag, you have Ningishita. I mean, you have so many different gods, right? And the reason why, and I'm glad you said Sumerian, because from what I understand, okay, uh, the the cuneiform writing system didn't really go into the gods until much later after the civilization started. Okay, when they first started recording their history, they recorded their history not in a cuneiform writing system, but in pictographic script or in types of pictograms and stuff like that. It was more like pictures, basically cylinders and stuff like that. Depictions that were like just basically pictures, something like um almost like how you would look at hieroglyphic script. If you look at that, it's mostly in pictures. You got the hawks, you got the snakes, and so on and so forth and stuff like that, and it means certain things. But so with Anu being the Almighty God, before him, the person that was in charge of all the people that fell under, who these, um, I don't know exactly what to call them because some people call them gods, some people call them deities, some people just call them, regular people. So anybody so whoever fell under these individuals, basically, there was an individual named Alelu. I believe I said that correctly. He's Alalu, and he was in charge. And then Anu and Alelu got into a fight, and that's how Anu got in charge, and that's how the Anunnaki came to be under Anu. So Enki is considered one of the creators, along with uh, his uh, his father Anu, and different, and it just depends on what time frame you look at it, because when this writing system was created and they talked about their gods, depending on the city state, each city state had a different version of these gods. So I can tell you, one version here, and then it'll be a different version from somewhere else, because that's the way it just was. I mean, there were, you know, Anu was one way, but he wasn't actually. They really don't have any records of him per se. You know what I'm saying? They do, but they don't have like a lot on him from the others. You know, they say that he's actually really not uh, written in the text as much or depicted in the text as much. And when he is, it's sometimes confused with, you know, other things. You know, because the way his pictographic script came. So it's just depend. I can say something right now. Somebody can be listening to it and be like, "Oh, he's wrong. This is actually what it says." But that person will be right because depending on what, like I said earlier, the translation that you get of that individual, it would be different. I mean, they all had certain roles. Um, like Inky was related to water. You know what I mean? So you know that could be anything from rivers, lakes, ponds. It doesn't matter. He was just related to water. You know what I mean? So you know, and him being one of the creators of humanity, uh, he's also known as, you know, like I said, depending on who you talk to, he could be described as a god, a deity, just a regular person, mythology, fiction, or whatever you want to call it. But there's recordings of Enki, okay, and he's supposed to have been the firstborn to Anu. Now, there's a lot of discrepancies between Enki and Enlil, not being brothers, but father and son type thing. But that just depends on who's the translator you go through. You know, like some people would say they were brothers, some people would say they weren't brothers. And I'm not going to go in too deep into that because that's going to, you know, that takes away a lot from everything else. But you know, there is actually recordings of the Anunnaki. And I got to make this clear. The Anunnaki is actually a Akkadian term. That's not Sumerian. The Sumerians called them the Anuna. And the reason why I say Anunnaki is because that grabs people's attention. Everybody hears the word Anunnaki, that grabs their attention. Like, oh yeah, I want to hear something else, you know. But I'm going to give you the real side of it. The Sumerians actually called them the Anuna, and that's spelled different ways. Anunna, Anuna. It's just spelled different ways. Okay, and there is actually recordings of them, and I have the book, and I'm when I do the edit of here, I'm going to show the actual date of on it because I didn't grab the book, but it tells you it's the ancient literature of Sumer, and it tells you, and I think that's the book title. I'll show it, of course, when I bring it on here, but it tells you on the back of the book about 18 BCE is when this literature was written, okay, and when it was first recorded on cuneiform tablets, okay. And this is actually the flood story and the creation of humans and all that stuff that everybody knows. But the time frame, I believe, I want to say is 18 BCE. And like I said, I'll show it on the back of it. But it's it's one way to understand this is um, everybody gets these things confused because you have one known idea of who the Anunnaki slash Anuna is. They are extraterrestrial, so on and so forth. And then, but if you look at them like how we would look at religion today, right? Like how we would look at, you know, Catholicism, you know, um, and the Muslim faith, or the Islamic faith. I said that wrong. But if you look at the different religions, okay, they do have similarities between each other. You know, the names may be different. It may be an added story here, or a story missing from there, or so on. It might be tweaked a little bit here and there and stuff like that. But that's even throughout the Holy Bible itself. That's why you have so many different versions of it. You know what I mean? And I actually have this book, and it's pretty interesting, and it actually gives you a time frame of the Holy Bible, and it gives, and I just started it like yesterday actually, and I got pretty far deep in it, and it's pretty interesting, and I'll talk about it later. But um, if you look at the Anunnaki or the Sumerians, and their beliefs in the Anuna slash Anunnaki, they were a religious type of individuals. They believed in these gods. They prayed to these gods for certain things, for agriculture, for instance. Help us bring rain and sunshine so we can get the crops growing. So it was actually stories behind them. But when they told these stories, it seems like, and this is just from my understanding, they were told for entertainment, not entertainment like um how we look at entertainment today, like how we watch TV today, or let our minds boggle through, our laptops or our smartphones and stuff like that. But entertainment, as far as sitting be at the end of the day after all that hunting and cooking and taking care of the kids and all that, just being a sit outside by the whatever fire they may have had and telling these stories about these individuals, like Anu, Enki, Ninhursag, and so on and so forth, because these people were actually recorded on cuneiform writing. And this goes back to, this is where it gets interesting. I took a class, right, and I want to say it was from Bar Ilan University, and they said that the let's see, yeah, I just want to verify because I do have my book right here. When I took notes from that class, right? Okay, so yeah, I took a class, right, from, I believe it was from Bar Ilan University, and they said the beginning of Mesopotamia economic text written in pictographic script is the emergence and is the beginning of I guess what you would consider the writing system. And this happened around 3200 BC. So I'm gonna say this again. So around 3200 BC was the beginning of Mesopotamia, ancient Mesopotamia. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And the economic text written in the pictographic script. So it was, from what I understand from that, is that the pictographic script was what the beginning of their writing script is. And like I said, it was for different reason. It wasn't for the write about their gods. That didn't happen until later on. So I mean, it's just interesting. That's it.
I know with the Anunnaki kind of reminds me of the El and Elohim as a little bit as well.
And it's funny that you say that, because the Elohim, uh it could be multiple gods or it could be meaning one god, just depending on the words before and after, of course, right?
Yeah.
So it is interesting that even in the ancient Hebrew text, right, the Abrahamic faith came around somewhere around 2000 BC. Well, at least that's what I read from the book that I'm reading now, and it's from a Rose Book collection or something like that. So it's a really popular book out there with this information. But um, it, it's interesting because if you know about the Abrahamic faith starting around 2000 BC, right, that takes you well into uh, the Sumerians, right? The Sumerians, the Akkadians, the Babylonians, and so on and so forth, right? So that right there should tell you that Abraham knew exactly who the Anuna slash Anunnaki were. It was just depends on what God he was worshiping or chose to worship from that time. You know what I mean? I don't know if that makes sense or not, but think of it like this: he chose one of the Anunnaki gods to be his chosen god that he will worship, that he will plead his life to, that he will plead his sole purpose to that Lord, right? Because Lord is actually a title, right? So Lord God, Lord Enki, Lord Enlil, Lord Anu, Lord Ningishzida, it was just a title. So um, it's interesting to know that it's possible that all of Judaism, Christianity, and so on and so forth, they just have their own different version of the Anuna slash Anunnaki because of just like in ancient Mesopotamia, and each city state had their own god that they worship, just like in ancient Egypt. It's no different of ancient Egypt. Every god, every city state in ancient Egypt had their own god that they worship.
Was also the
So
same in Greece as well.
yeah,
Hmm.
that's what. But there's this understanding that there's the one that was in charge of them all, basically. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like the one that was in charge of all of them, because somebody has to be in charge. You get a group of people who don't know each other from anywhere, one of them is going to become the leader. It's just natural. It is just something that is natural. I don't know. It just happens. You look at every animal species like that. It's like that. You'll have people turning on each other, just like you'll have in the wild animals out there, they'll turn on each other too. It just happens, you
Yep.
know.
Same with gorillas, wolves, all that sort of stuff. Where the new leader comes involved. So
Yeah,
100% correct, man.
yeah. The alpha males.
Yep.
It's just yeah, it's just what it is. So that's that same thing. That's basically what happened to the Anuna slash the Anunnaki. Alelu was the one that was in charge, the one that was the big man. The one that was, the one that was, the overall ruler. And then Anu basically challenged him to a fight, because back then it seemed like in those times, if you're going to be in charge of everybody, you have to be at least stronger than everybody that challenges you, right? And if you basically get whooped,
Yep.
you lose your throne. And they fought naked for some odd reason. So there was no weapons involved. There was no, you can't pull on my shirt or, grab my pants or anything like that. We're going to and that's actually in the ancient texts and their depictions. Like it's amazing because they were strict about who was going to be in control. If you're going to overrule us, if you're going to rule us, if you're going to take our tax money and this and that, you have to be strong enough to take us out, take everybody out that challenges you, at least somebody who's because it just couldn't be just some regular person. So Anu had to been somebody that was, um, you know, in the realm of being in that circle basically. So he had to be close to Alelu one way or another to be able to challenge him. It's just like some regular person here, trying to challenge any of the presidents of today. That wouldn't go good for them. You know what I mean? But back then it was a different story. So it had to be somebody who was in charge. It wasn't just a debate or something like that. It wasn't, hey, we're going to get on two podiums, we're going to debate our why we're better for the people type thing. Because back then in reality, if you think about it, a lot of people, they had to have somebody that was in charge that would make sure that they were protected, and they couldn't be protected by somebody that was very fragile. You know what I mean? If you look at the history of all the ancient texts, it was even the women, they had to be more powerful than the most, what they thought was probably the most powerful man at that time. And when they, basically whooped that man's ass, everybody was like, okay, yeah, maybe we need to, you know, rethink this for a second, this type of thing, because she challenged him, it was almost challenges. But yeah, the Anuna slash Anunnaki is pretty interesting.
I've also heard that there's some theories that line in between that they could be mistellings or misrememberings of their ancient kings that inspired and turn into gods or deities, whichever word you prefer to
Yeah,
use as well.
dignified, being
Yeah,
deified,
I
being
quite like that
deified. Yeah,
theory.
yeah, yeah. And that's what I was saying. Some people believe they was just regular people. I mean, Enki is known as was also sometimes, and some people depict him as probably like a fish god sometimes, right? Now, I'm a fisherman. There are some people who can't fish to save their life, and there are people who can catch 10 to 15 fish in one day every time they go to a body of water, right? Now, if you have about, let's say, about 6 people in your tribe, right? Because the tribes weren't that big back then. I mean, there were small tribes that was in a community together, but or secluded from each other, but it wasn't like, it wasn't, that many people, a tribe. And when I say 6 people, I mean like in one tent, maybe, you know what I mean? Like some of their tents were big,
Yep.
depending on the tents, on the tent size, you know, one tribe, a group of individuals. But sometimes a lot of these tribes were together as a group of individuals, and sometimes it just depended. So, but like I was saying, like, um, it's interesting because the ancient text actually talks about this stuff. They don't take away from what it is. It's just some people exaggerate and some people fill in the blanks with their opinions. And I try to get away from that because I like gathering people's opinions, but it seems like everybody has the same exact opinion on everything. There's um, no difference in opinion. Like when I said earlier, when everybody thinks extraterrestrial, I don't think it's all extraterrestrial. Because if you read the Bible, right? Anytime somebody spoke into God, it was mostly do like what, like a vision almost, cloud of smoke,
Yep.
fire, you know, through a meditative state, fasting, something that would actually alter your mind. You weren't in your right mind. And when I say right mind, I mean like you wasn't. I see your cat. You
Yeah.
wasn't
Shut it.
conscious of. I'm not gonna say conscious. I don't even know. I don't know how to put the word right mind in because that could be
Like a
disrespectful to some
psychedelic
people.
state or dream time.
Yeah, what that's what I'm saying is that's what is described in the Bible. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? Is that they were in a visionary type of state. It was through visions. Jacob's ladder was through a vision. Ezekiel's will through a vision. Moses through a vision. He meditated on top of the mountains. That's a meditation vision type state. Some people can have these very vivid visions in a meditative state, so um this stuff, it's interesting to know that all this stuff played a part in our history, and we'd like to take away um from um, what we did as actual humans. Because, like I said, a lot of people talk extraterrestrial. If they can't explain it, they make up something else to fill in the blank instead of trying to do more research and trying to figure out the pieces. Because I talked about the Sumerians, right? And I talked about the pictographic script and stuff like that, right? Well, the Ubadians were actually in that land before the Sumerians, and they had a type of depictions and stuff like that. They had their pottery and stuff like that. Art has always been here. As long as we've been on planet Earth, we've been creating art, which has been creating a lot more art now because we have a lot more people. But back then, and our art is actually, saved. A lot of people, cherish it and hold on to it and take care of it. Back then, the art can only last but for so long because they was using natural element, natural stuff out there. Clay tablets, you know, mud, this and that, stuff that was very fragile and that can break very easily and deteriorate over time, depending on, the location of where it's at. So they have these depictions. It's just that a lot of people, because when you said Sumerians earlier, it goes back to a lot of people like to place everything with the Sumerians. Like it's crazy. I know you had some more questions. So before I go on, go ahead, ask me another question to see before I go on to
No
that other
worries,
one.
Taro. My next question was, what similarities did you see in the flood story of the Epic of Gilgamesh and the Bible?
Well, yeah. See, so yeah, so that's one. That's part of it. So like, there are a lot of similarities between them. I mean, they both have a flood story, right? And they both have somebody who's um, were possibly saved. You know, depend even in the Bible, you can't just read the King James version and be like it was only Adam. It was Noah and his family and that were saved. There is actually indications in a lot of other Bibles and a lot of other texts that it wasn't just Noah's and his family and the close individuals. This is like his maid servants and certain other individuals that were saved too. There was actually more than what is described in the Bible, and you know I've read the Epic of Gilgamesh. I probably want to say about 4 or 5 times, probably by now, right? And it's from Andrew George, right? And he's actually the original translator, and uh he has actually a new translation of it, right? But he still has the old version included in the book. It's like multiple different translations of the Epic of Gilgamesh, right? And I know a lot of times it's considered a Sumerian text, right? And that's where the time frame comes from, or who they give the credit to. So there is similarities, and that's why I said, Abraham would have known exactly who the Anuna slash Anunnaki were, because there is actually a flood story that talks about that goes back to many people would say to the Sumerians. So he would have known that, that's just been another, you know, it was just over thousands of years, um, that's a lot of time for a lot of things to change, things get a little bit mixed up, but the core foundation of it is there was individuals who were told by a god that a flood was coming and to do certain things to save your family, and carry certain animals with you for this journey. That's the basic core. Now all the fill in the blanks from that when you want to make an extraordinary movie out of, then yeah, go for it. You know what I mean? But yeah, there's actually a lot of a text that talks about it.
That's cool. I've also heard that in some stories, not all, because as you mentioned before, there's different stories. Even the Babylonians have their version of it too. But I've heard in some of them, some of the cubits of the so-called ark or the boat even match up in some stories. Not all of them, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean the dimensions and what they had to do. Yeah, just depends, because it depends on how they measure things. I mean, we have tape measures and if you and a lot of people don't even know this. Somebody who's just uh, who knows what a tape measure is will be like, yeah, all tape measures measure the same, which that is incorrect.
Yep.
Anybody who's ever worked with tape measures, if you're going to start on a project, you have to use the same tape measure throughout the whole project, because it will be off. I mean, I've bought, and not on purpose or anything, but I bought, 2 different types of tape measures. I had one, and then I thought I lost it and I couldn't find it, and I needed another one, so I went and bought another one. But I bought a different brand, and then eventually I found the other one, and I took both the tape measures, and I went to go measure something, and I went to go cut it because I had extra wood or whatever, and I actually learned that, yeah, these tape measures are actually off. So depending on the way they measured things back then, you know, all that could be off. You know
Yep.
what I mean? You know what I mean? I could say one thing, and like I said, somebody would say, "No, that's wrong. This is what it is," and you will be 100% right, because I've read it so many different ways. I'm just giving you an example, basically.
Well, I get you, brother. And then my next question is the transition from the Sumerian age to the Babylonian age. How that come
See, and
about?
that's a good question, because that goes back to what I was talking about earlier. A lot of people would take, with the Hittites, the Syrians, the Babylonians, what the Akkadians said, and they would say this is what the Sumerians said. See, the Sumerian writing system or cuneiform writing system stayed around for a very, very long time. I mean, even today, there are people who can communicate with each other within just the Sumerian cuneiform writing system. So it really never really died. people are still able to do it today. You know what I mean? People are still able to read it today. How accurate it is that you of your information, that's a whole different story. You know, um, I can write a paragraph, right? Because for my book, I have two different writing programs. I one of them is Grammarly. I know a lot of people know about Grammarly. But what I do is I'll write a paragraph for my book, right? And I'll highlight it, and I'll ask it, hey, or I won't highlight it. It'll all let me. I'll ask it to do the checks for me because it'll have a little green tab on the bottom, right? Well, depending on what program I use, I have to highlight it because on certain programs you have to highlight what you want certain parts before what you want checked or whatnot. But anyway, the point is I can click on this little G looking thing on the bottom, and it'll tell me all the grammatical errors that I have in there. Missing commas. Um, I need an extra space here or whatever. It'll just tell me whatever grammatical errors I have in there, and then I'll take that and I'll put it in a different program, right? And it will tell me that I need to fix this, that, and the third, right? And then I'll highlight that and put it in the next one, and it will say fix this, that, and third. So it's always, something that everybody, even AI, is going to understand something differently. We're going to understand something differently written. So just depending on how well they were with their translation and how close and accurate they were, that we have stories, but we also have different stories because we have the founders, like Andrew George. We have people who like George Smith that can do it. You have Jeremy Black. You have so many different individuals that the team from ETCSL that can translate this stuff, and you'll get a different idea of what it is. You'll get a different version of what is, because not one. It's not like today, um, where it's clear cut depending on your language how it is, because we've been using our language for a while now. But back then they did the same exact thing, and then it just changed and morphed. But it never really died because people can still communicate within the thing. But the Babylonian time frame, it just depends on what source you get it from. But they at that time frame they were still writing in Sumerian cuneiform. Like Sumerian cuneiform was written for a long time. Like they it was like almost like a record for records, I guess you could say. Like, hey, this was the original, like a carbon copy,
Yeah.
I guess you could say, of all languages.
Yeah, so that's cool, man. Because the Babylonians, they were pretty impressive. They also influenced Judaism, in which in turn they were influenced by the Sumerians. So their knowledge passed on even through the Middle Eastern faiths, because all those places were close together and there was a lot of trade going on. So no doubt oral stories would have been traded too. And no doubt that would have influenced each other's cultures.
Yeah, and see, and that's why I said, because depending on who you talk to, right? No matter, it's just so it's so crazy because they how can I say it? Depending on people's idea of when the civilization started is when the time frame began. Like a lot of people say the Sumerian civilization started around 3200 BC. That's about the average median that I find, right? Is around 3200 BC. Some people will say, you know, it'll be plus or minus, right? So, but and that the challenge is what you consider a civilization.
Hmm.
I go off of Oxford University's definition of civilization only because they have the electronic text corpus of Sumerian literature, which is ETCSL, which is sponsored and from Oxford University. And then they also work with other people, like with the museums around the world, getting their cuneiforms and translations and stuff. So that's why I picked their definition of a civilization. But if you ask 10 different people what a civilization is, they're going to have 10 different views and ideas. So when I look up the Babylonian civilization, this is where I'm glad you brought that part up, is because when we go back to the Epic of Gilgamesh, Andrew George writes in his book in the introduction and I've shared this so many times throughout my website and my books or in my my articles and through my videos, is that Andrew George says that he can't decide what is fact over fiction, right? He doesn't know what's actually, it says fiction over myth. Now, if you look at the definition of myth, that's one definition. You look at the definition of fiction and so on and so forth, but they can't tell what's actually facts, right? Basically, what really actually happened. So when I read that into in the introduction, and then I read the translation of the Epic of Gilgamesh, then guess what? I'm stuck with the idea of, okay, yeah, this sounds good, but how can how what evidence does it gives me to believe that this actually have happened, and what evidence gives me to believe that it didn't happen? You know what I mean? Like, is this an actual story? And when you read Gilgamesh's translations, he has visions too. That's why a lot of times he gets woken up. I think he gets woken up in one night like 3 different times, if I'm not mistaken. You know, and he thinks that, I think his sidekick, I believe that he thinks his sidekick is the one that actually woke him up, but I'm not sure exactly how that plays out, because it's different times of the versions. But the point is he's startled, woken up. Anybody that has sleep paralysis before, when you finally move, after that jolt, that's like one of those startle, like, hey, it's crazy. It's a crazy feeling. But that goes back. But when I look up the Babylonian civilization, I always get different dates because of what is considered a civilization. But if you look around 2000 BC, uh, that's where you get the idea of when the Babylonian Empire or the civilization may have started. It's somewhere around that time frame. It's like I said, it's just different dates. But uh, going back to Abraham and the Abrahamic faith, that's around the same exact time frame. So, like I said, they knew about who the Anunna/Anunnaki were, because the Enuma Elish, which is the oldest or one of the oldest creation stories that's in actual detail about how the gods came to be, how the universe came to be, how the planets came to be, and how so on and so forth, how things happened, right? It's a detailed creation story, right? And this is from the Babylonian time frame. And it actually has, and depending on what translation, like I always say, if you look at the translation, and I look it up real quick, because I don't want to get the author's name of it wrong, but let me see, because I like, I told you about the sacred text, right?
Yeah,
Remember
I
that
love that
website?
site.
Yeah, so I go there, right, a lot, right? And you can actually say it's, sacred-text.com, right? Excuse me. And you can actually go, let's see. Well, you can actually go to there, and you can look up the 7 tablets of the, or you can look up the Enuma Elish, the Epic of Creation. Sometimes some people know them as the 7 tablets of creation, right? And the Enuma Elish is translated by L.W. King, right? In 1902, or it was published in London in 1902, right? And you can go to the sacred-text.com, right? And look this up, right? And then if you're on your computer, you can hit Control F, right? And a little box should come up, right? If you type in Enuma Elish, right? There's two times the word, the term Enuma Elish is used. It's once during the title, because of course it says Enuma Elish, the Epic of Creation, L.W. King, translator from the 7 tablets of creation, London, 1902, which I also will have a shot of this on here. And if you, like I said, you hit Control F, or you find, if you have an iPhone, if you're on a web page and you hit those 3 little dots that's on the bottom right corner of your screen, and if you hit those, if you scroll up or scroll down, you should find something that says find in page. And if you type in Numa Elish in there, it will come up, and you'll see once that it's on the title. And the second time is, it says another, Another time is during, it says another version. Strictly speaking, the text is not a creation legend, though it gives a variant form of the principal incident in the history of the creation, according to the Enuma Elish. Here, the fight with the dragon did not precede the creation of the world, but took place after men had been created and cities had been built. Okay, so that's the second time, and the reason why I point that out is so people can, if they're listening, they can go ahead and do that. But now, if you go back to that box, right, or you go to a finding page on your phone, I don't know what it is on your on the Android, and if you go back up there and you type Nibiru, right, Nibiru, right, it only comes up one time in the Enuma Elish, right? And it says, and I want to show it on here. It says, "Let his name be Nibiru, the Caesar of the mist." So right there, right? You know how a lot of people say, well, the Anunnaki, because I was talking about the extraterrestrial, right? A lot of people say, well, the Anunnaki came from, planet Nibiru, and there's no actual cuneiform that says that, right? None of that. The whole extraterrestrial theory is off of Zachariah Sitchin. That's where we get the information from. That's where the whole planet Nibiru that orbits the sun every 3,600 years comes from, right? There's no doubt about that. So, with that being said, uh, 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 if you go and do what I told you on sacred-text.com, you will see that Nibiru is only mentioned once. And when I already said what it was, right, that doesn't tell you anything about a planet. You just fill in the blanks from everything that you read before it and after that. You know what I mean? And a lot of people will tell me that's what it says in the Enuma Elish. And I know that they don't ever read it because when I says it's only mentioned one time.
Yep.
Like, you have to read the whole thing. And I'm like, bro, do you know how to use computers? I'm technologically very advanced. I understand how to use computers. I know that if I'm on a computer, I hit Control F on any document, I'm going to be able to find it, whether it's a website, a Word, it doesn't matter. I'll be able to find it because it's finding it in that page. And the same thing with your phone. I don't know what it is on the Android, but on the iPhone, all you have to do is hit the three little dots on the bottom, and I think it says like find in page,
Control
and
F, you
boom,
said, yeah, as
yeah,
well.
Control F,
Cool. I
yeah.
wrote that down.
Yeah,
Future
just I'm
references.
telling you, bro. Listen, I'm telling you, that's how I find stuff so easily because a lot of the stuff that I know I can back up, not because of the books that I have. I have a lot of books. I mean, I talk about them a lot. You know what I'm saying? But sacred-text.com has all the same information. Where you think most of this stuff comes from? It comes from these individuals, these translators. They have the Epic of Gilgamesh. You can read Samuel Noah Kramer's book online. It's on public domain. I spent money on the book. You can buy a Kindle, right? And you can change all those things to a PDF file, send it to your Kindle. And now you don't have to worry about lugging around a big old computer. If you have a tablet, it's even better because you can go to sacredtouch.com and a tablet and a freaking Kindle is about the same, depending on which version you get. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I'm telling you, the information is out there. So when people tell me, oh, you're just, because I have people tell me all the time, why do you dismiss Zachariah Sitchin? Why you don't believe what he says? When I said, because when I read his books, there was nothing that backed up his what he was trying to say. It's his interpretation. I know of his interpretation. Do I believe it? No, I don't. Why? Because he doesn't give me enough evidence. It's just the same thing like religion. I don't get enough evidence from religion to believe in one God. I'm given through different religions that there are multiple gods. Prove to me that there's one. You know what I mean? You
Yeah,
know
right,
the
100%.
that's what I'm saying. So it's not me. I'm not trying to be an ass. I'm just I've read a lot of different ancient texts. I've read the same ones that a lot of people like Zachariah Sitchin. I've read Zachariah Sitchin's book like 5 or 6, 7 different times. You know, I've read him a lot. I've researched the heck out of him. I mean, his books are great. I mean, they are. It's just hard. I look at his books like this. Any movie that you've seen that's based on a true story, you know what I mean. His
Yep.
books are basically like that.
I
They're
get you.
based on a true story. You got the true history to some of the stuff, then you got the exaggeration part of it. You
Yep,
know
for
what I mean?
sure.
So that's how I look at his books. How did I learn that? Easily. I went to the sources that he said he used. when he talked about the back of his index in some of his books and in some of his books of where he got his sources from, I was like, okay, that's too easy. Let me go get those same exact books. Let me read those same exact individuals. And then not only that, let me make sure that those same individuals that you have in the index are the founders of the actual translations. And why, and if they are, then why is your translations different than the founders? Where's the mix up at? Why do you have something totally different than this person? And a lot of people don't know this. Um, in one of his books, it's published by his niece. Niece actually is, I think it's the Anunnaki Chronicles. And in the beginning of the book, she talks about how Zachariah Sitchin came up with the idea of the word Anunnaki, meaning those. I can't even remember what because I try not to remember it on purpose to get it mixed up. But his version, and I put a screenshot of it up on here too, so you can see it too. But the it talks about how he came up with his version of the Nephilim, right? What he believes, what the Nephilim means, what the Anunnaki basically means, because he actually believed that the Nephilim and Anunnaki were one and the same. That's what I get from reading all his books, basically. And um, if you look at, and he came up with this idea when he was a little kid, okay, like he in Sunday school. So his whole idea of what he believed in as a little kid carried forward to him being an adult, right? And now he has hundreds, probably millions of people who believe the same. Well, we know that there's millions of people that believe his theory. But if they believe in it, they believe a child, and I'm not saying that a child can't be right, but he didn't believe what the religious people said since a child. He already came up with his idea of who the Nephilim slash Anunnaki or whoever he thought they were, because that's who he, because those, I can't remember exactly what it is, his term for them, and is, but let me see, let me look it up. No,
I've
I
also noticed
was,
there's a few exaggerations on some ancient texts as well, not just Sumerian, even with the ancient Egyptian for the Book of the Dead, for instance. I understand why, to give it a bit more of a spice as well, but because sometimes when you read those old texts, they can be boring, unless you're a history nut, you like reading history. Like some bits in the Book of the Dead frustrated me when I was reading the House of the Overseer fucking 6 times in a row. It pissed me off a couple of times. So I see why
right.
people add stuff into there sometimes, but they shouldn't do that because it takes away
No,
the actual history.
but see, that's the thing. That's not what, you know, that started with Zachariah Sitchin. You know, I read Eric von Daniken's book, Chariots of the Gods, and I love that book because he doesn't go straight to extraterrestrials. He just asks, hey, is it possible? Excuse me. And he asked that because uh, from what his understanding was back then. You know, this was like in like 1960 something, I believe, when he wrote this book. But I don't know exactly, how long he knew this information before he wrote his book. You know what I mean? Like how long, he's been piecing all this together for exactly. But he gives these questions of this idea. Now, Zachariah Sitchin, his books are great. If you if you love history and you're trying to gather somebody's attention and you're allowed to put on there, hey, this is not accurate and this is not accurate, or take out all the inaccurate stuff that's in the book. He has a really good history timeline of some things, based on his understanding, but the whole extraterrestrial planet Nibiru coming to get gold for their planet type thing, that's all his interpretation, that's not backed up by any type of actual fine evidence. You know what I mean? Something that you and I can actually pick up and read for ourselves. I was just having a conversation with this guy. This guy was talking about, oh, there is a copy of the Emerald tablets out there. There is actually no Emerald tablet that people think they think it is from those. You know what I mean? And when I
Oh,
say what they think it is because there are Emerald tablets. There are people who actually, put writing systems on Emerald tablets. It's not hard to get emeralds, you know what I mean? So there's actually those. So I can't take away from those, but there's not one that's written in the Atlantean language that was from Thoth. There isn't one. You know, that's everybody's interpretation of what they read from, you know, some of these people who swear up and down that they're learning that language. There isn't, because if there is, then show a physical copy of it. How is it that you're the only person that has this? Everybody wants to know this. You keep saying all the time, I just want to get the knowledge out there. I just want to share the truth. I want to get it out there. Well, then show us the Atlantean language. Let us help you translate it. Why do you want to be the sole bearer? Are you going to wait until you translate it and then you're going to share it with everybody and then you're going to make $1 million off of it? Then 10 years from now, somebody's going to break the whole thing from it. Say, this is not even a real language. You know what I mean?
Yep,
So
100%, brother.
if it's true, if you want to share, if you really want to give us the information, then hey, give it to us. Give it to us. Because I'm telling you, everybody keeps believing these things, and that's why I said I said it's not that hard. I said yes, I do believe in extraterrestrials. I'm not going to take away from that idea. Mathematically, it has to be possible that they're out there. Did they do the things that they say that Sumerians written in their cuneiform writing system? I doubt it. You know, yes, there's a slight chance that it possibly happened because there's always a possibility for everything, and I could be 100% wrong, but there is no. The Sumerians did not record in their cuneiform a planet orbiting our sun every 3,600 years, and the Anunnaki came here to mine gold for their planet. That's not discussed in their cuneiform writing system. At least what I have right now, the electronic text corpus of Sumerian literature, the book, you know, the ancient literature of Sumer, you know.
I read it as well, and I was because I first heard about Anarchy, I was reading the actual text. And I'm thinking, where the fuck's this Nibiru? You know, and I was
it,
like, yeah,
it's because people, because Zachariah Sitchin holds up this tablet. It's actually a smaller tablet, but it's in his pictures is a big old tablet, and it's supposed to have these all these dots around it, right? 11 dots around it, and in the middle of it's supposed to be the sun with the rays, right? And he calls that the 12th planet. So when you count all those dots, including the sun, is the 12th planet. Well, let me tell you what is wrong with that concept in the first place. And I don't understand, why am I the only one that talks about this? Is the sun was never identified as a planet. Never, ever was it identified as a planet.
that's a good point. Always like a ball of energy or a god, all that sort of stuff. But yeah,
It was
everything
never
else. But
identified,
yeah, everything else was,
not
but
a
no, not the
planet.
sun. That's cool,
So
man.
when he wrote his book, the famous book that everybody goes off of, right? The 12th planet, he's including the sun
Hmm.
as the equation to get to that 12th planet. But the sun was never identified as a planet.
No, that's cool, bro. That's cool. But
So
that
that's
makes
why I'm
that makes a
saying
lot of sense because it's always been like a divine thing.
it always,
Yeah.
always, it was always something to be held like, hey, it was held as a god, as a sign of worship, a prayer, sun gazing to for meditative states, different types of
Hmm.
meditative states. It was never a planet. So when you look at that cylinder, right? eh, Look, I'm gonna see if I can bring it up on here real quick so I can show you. Because the cylinder seal VA 243.
Was it classified as technically a burning star or something like that, eh?
Um, well, I'm not sure about that.
I have to look it up again.
Okay, so yeah, here we go. So I'm about to share my screen to you real quick so I can show you this. Share screen. Let's see. Do you see this?
Yep.
Okay, so you see where my mouse is at right here?
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah, I
so
see what you're talking about.
if you count a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, right? Because he says Nibru, he calls his book the 12th planet. The sun was never
Hmm.
a planet.
I get
Now,
you. And that could even
I've
just be
never
representative of the zodiac as well.
right. I mean, I don't know, but let me see.
But yeah, that whole thing could be symbolic. That could even be like the five senses, everything.
Well, Michael S. Heiser talks about it too, and he talks a lot about Pleiades and stuff like that. But I don't really understand his theory on it either. Um, I'm trying to find. Okay, so yeah, this is what I was trying to find. Can you see this right here?
Yeah,
Okay. So there's one missing. Okay, yeah, this one is not gonna be a good one. So anyway, I'm not gonna be able to find it.
that's right. I still get the point.
But yeah, I was trying to find one where it showed uh
They got the moon and the sun as well.
yeah, how well next to Zacharias Sitchin's how he did it. Like his it's in his book. He how he lined up with the planet Nibiru thing. Let me check this out real quick to see. Yeah. I don't think I'm gonna be able to find it. But I know the moon was on there. I'm trying to see. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, here we go. Here's a good one. So you see where they have the moon on there too. And we know
Yeah,
the moon wasn't a planet either. You know what I mean?
yeah. So the moon was
So
sacred too, the moon and the sun.
yeah, so that's why I said like it's crazy because he counts I'm just gonna say it, he counts the sun as a planet. Okay. So it just doesn't add up to me
Hmm.
of what he says.
I
Okay.
would have rather
That's
seen
the
that as a zodiac, if anything, the first time I seen that, to be honest.
well, see, Michael S. Heiser, also Dr. Michael S. Heiser, who passed away just recently, he talks about how his most he disagrees with Sitchin, and he actually asked Sitchin to give him proof about the same thing, but Sitchin never wanted to do it.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? He never wanted to debate him. And I know a lot of people don't like to debate and stuff like that, but if you're really trying to get the information out there, sometimes you got to get out your eggshell. You know what I
Yep,
mean?
that's
You,
right.
you you have to break out of that eggshell and do what's right for everybody else because everybody wants to know the truth.
Hmm.
I mean, there are people who actually argue with me and say, yes, there's a planet Nibiru. And I said, it's not according to the Sumerians. And they'll
Yep,
be like, it's in the Enuma Elish. And I said, well, that's not the Sumerians. That was actually written in the Babylonian time frame.
yep. And people confuse the two with Babylonians and Sumerians quite a lot.
Yeah. So
For sure.
it's not, and not only that, if you go to the sacred-text.com and type and do exactly what I said earlier, you will see that Nehru was only mentioned one time in Numa Elish.
Hmm.
Okay, and this so it just, I mean, what am I supposed to believe? You know what I mean? I mean, you're telling me you read the text, but and I even have a, matter of fact, because I think I got mine. I got a version of it on my website too.
I have a version of it in my book,
Yeah,
in my room on the bookshelf.
I have a version of it on my website. I can't remember exactly where I got it from. Oh shit! I'm gonna have to go through each one of these damn things. Let me see. I'll try it. See. Okay, so what? So basically, um, the like I said earlier, Nibiru is only mentioned uh one time in the Enuma Elish, right? And if you're telling me that if it talks about a planet, then can you prove it to me? You know what I mean? Like it's not me. Like is that so much to ask from
Nah,
someone?
no, it's not. Like when I first picked it up, I expected to be flooded with flood stories and fucking Nibiru stuff, and I found nothing when I started reading that. I come across a flood story, but it wasn't what I first thought, but that's because of, as you mentioned before, the other dudes' translations and misinformation and stuff. That's what a lot of people pick up on. I understand. It could be interesting, fun, good stuff to smoke weed to and watch, or read even. But yeah, 100%. There's all different translations, our own interpretations, and especially in the modern era now, like interpretations and the way we view things are obviously going to change, especially with time.
Right. Right. And that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think I don't think it's anything wrong with wanting to have evidence. Like I had somebody tell me some stuff about Thoth the other day, and they sent me a link to, and there's nothing wrong with it because I have a
Hmm.
blog article too, but this person actually sent me a link to a blog article that was just reiterating the same thing that Zachariah Sitchin was saying. And
Yeah,
I
a lot
said
of
that's
stuff we
not
have with
right.
Thoth is like a lot of it doesn't even come from Egypt. Some of it just comes from old alchemy text as well, and it's just being exaggerated on as well. Like especially with topics today with like Atlanteans and Thoth and all that.
Yeah. So it's not like I'm trying to be mean. I just want to know, because if
Hmm.
you're going to tell me to believe something, give me the truth behind it. Where does it actually say it in the ancient text, or is this somebody's interpretation of somebody's interpretation of somebody's interpretation? You know what I mean?
Yep.
And that's why I always go back to the beginning of the first guy, and I always be like, okay, I want to see what the original guy said first, because then it'll make sense to me. I
Hmm.
can see where where it went off at, and that's why I like revised new translations, because it tells me that this person actually stayed up to date with their information. You know what I mean? They said, okay, hey, this is what I believe right now based off the information that I've received today. And then when they get new information, they're like, oh, okay, now I need to add this because this actually changed some things. That gives me confidence in you, because you are able to admit
Hmm.
that you were wrong. You were able to stand by your word. Hey, I did enough research, and this is what I learned so far. You know, your thirst for knowledge should never stop. It
100%.
stops. When I hear people say, uh, yes, it was extraterrestrials, yes, it was aliens, yes, it was gods, yes, it was this, yes, it was that. That lets me know that you're done researching, because you already came to your conclusion. You know what I mean? I mean,
Yep.
I mean, if you've read thousands of books and those thousands of books say the same exact thing, and that's what you understand from reading those thousands of books, then hey, by all means, who am I to knock on that? You know what I mean? But I'm telling you the basic stuff that I've read, because there aren't uh, a thousand different Popo Vus. There isn't a thousand different Mahabharatas. There's only one version of it. There's a thousand different versions of it based off of different translations, meaning different understandings of it. But guess what? There's only one true version of it. And the only way we'll know the one true version is speaking to the actual person that recorded it, or persons who recorded it in that form. And guess what? We don't have that.
Yep.
So we're going off of everybody's different version. So
Yep.
you can, if you really want to study something, you'll have to read 5 different versions of the Popo Fu, 5 different versions of the Mahabharata, the 5 different versions of the Dead Sea Scroll, the 5 different versions of the Bible, and so on and so forth. But by that time, you're going to be so lost in the sauce, you're going to be so confused, because one thing, you're going to get things mixed up. You know what I'm saying? You know how many different versions of the Holy Bible there are?
Oh,
Jesus
fucking
Christ.
heaps. Heaps.
You know what I mean?
Yep. And then
You
you
can
got
spend
different
a
versions of
lifetime
what's
just
been
reading.
removed.
You can just spend a lifetime reading just the Holy Bible, the different versions by itself, and never get even close to being done, because there's
Yep.
so many different versions of it. So many different versions. And some of those
100%.
some of those versions had different um time periods where they were authorized to be read, and all times when they weren't authorized to be read, and when they were put into one different versions of, like, the King James version. That's I mean, we know that the Holy Bible is what, 66 different types of books, right? At one time it was only 3 books or 2 books or
Yep.
one book.
And the first Bible didn't even have an Old Testament in it. They rejected it.
Yeah, they built on upon it.
Yep.
They actually built upon it. It's like building a house. You got to start somewhere. You're not going to get the whole thing done in one day. It's the
Yep.
same thing with the Bible. They wrote one thing, And then they started getting the message out there, and they continued to do that, and started adding on to it. They didn't just sit down and say, hey, let's write a whole and complete Bible. And when we're
Yep.
done with the Bible, we're going to spread the word. No, they was like, let's spread the word now while we're writing it.
Yep.
You know what
And
I mean?
even back in Jesus' time, they didn't even have a agreeable canon on the Torah. There was all different versions of their writings, and they were arguing which one was correct. It wasn't until the 100s with the Greeks getting involved that they come to a conclusion of making one. So, he's pretty funny with that.
Yeah. So and that's what, and that's why I tell people all the time, man, like, you know, I only share what I've read so far. I've read many different ancient texts. I've read many different books. I understand where the information comes from. Now, believing in some of that, that's a different conversation, because I can't take the time and break down, you know, in 1 or 2 days, 3 days, or 4 days what I believe in. This is actually going to take a lot, because I have to start all the way from the beginning. You know, okay. Well, I mean, there's religious ideas of how the universe came to be. You know, and this was told thousands and thousands of years ago, and you have thousands of different versions of it. Me and you will have different ideas of what we know about our expertise. You know what I mean? And in our common ground, we may know the same amount of information, but we'll still look at it differently, only because that's just human nature. You're going to look at it differently. When you look at it
100%.
differently, you're going to explain it differently. And then that moves on to the next person, and that moves on to the next person, and so on and so forth. But we take away from what humans actually was capable of doing, and are still capable of doing. If we can't explain it, if you can't explain it, don't run and say, hey, well, gods or extraterrestrials did it, because you take away from actual what they did do.
Yeah, takes away the
Because
mystery.
it takes away a lot of stuff, because now you're having so many people focused on your idea, and there's no truth behind it.
Hmm.
Like, if I promise you, if Zechariah Sitchin would have never put it in that there's an orbit that there was a planet that orbited our sun every 3,600 years, and something came from somewhere else, and these were these individuals, and he kind of kept that to himself, and not really keep it to himself, but explained it in a different way, like not a planet type thing. I mean, that would have been like the golden book of all time, because it does. I mean, he does it does explain some stuff in there, like the astral belt. Like, how did the astral belt come to play? He gives his theories on it, just like
Hmm.
thousands of other people give their theories on it. You know what I mean? And then he talks about, why were they mining gold hundreds of thousands of years ago? You know, who knows why they were mining gold? You know, I know back in the old times, gold was currency. It's still currency. It
Yep.
hasn't changed. Gold is valuable. Why? I don't know. There's got to
Yep.
be something hidden element in it that makes it very popular.
One of our
You know,
ancestors probably just thought it looked pretty as well.
but platinum looks good. Not everybody likes yellow gold.
Yep.
It's like chocolate ice cream and vanilla. Not everybody likes chocolate ice cream. You know, so yellow gold is not. I mean, not everybody likes it. I mean, platinum. Look at platinum.
Yep.
You know, so it's something. Gold is very important, and he does ask some of those important questions, but he doesn't give no evidence
Hmm.
on Planet Nibiru. His interpretation of what he understands. A lot of people says that he gives evidence. He doesn't give evidence. He
Another
just
thing
gives
I
his
don't like about the
interpretation.
gold story with the Anunnaki is, say you had this hell advanced spacefaring civilization. Why come here with gold when there's an asteroid not too far away from us that's fucking full of the shit? you know?
Or in their universe period.
Yeah,
You know,
100%.
but see, that's why I try to understand, like, some of the stuff just doesn't line up. It is said that they came here 450,000 years ago. That means they're almost a half a million years in advance than our tech than us in technology. Okay, look where we was at 100 years ago in technology versus what we have today. Okay, now add that up to where it reaches up to a half a million. There is no telling what we'll be able to do.
Oh, 100%.
You
100%.
know what I mean? just in
And
the
I
last
have another
100
question for you
years.
too, Tyrone. Sorry, I cut you off, fella. My
No,
bad.
go ahead, go
This
ahead.
this one, I reckon you're gonna like it. It's agriculture and astrology's influence on the Sumerian religion.
That's a good one, because uh, Gobekli Tepe is considered the oldest religious site, right? And a lot of their stuff has to do with look like they have animals on their pillars and stuff like that, right? And there, if you look at the ancient Hebrew, right, the ancient Hebrew text, their idea religious started and seemed like through agriculture, through the bull, the bull was able to plow the ground to for the crops and stuff, right? The same thing with the Sumerians, because the Sumerians are known as not only as the founders of their first writing system, but through agriculture also. And I'm not saying agriculture as a whole, as that, because they say that they found evidence that goes back hundreds of thousands of years where agricultural could have been used, but this was in a mass production scale type thing. Like they actually had farms, their jobs was agriculture. There was no more going to go hunt or gather. Their duties was to be able to be on that farm, right? They were agriculture. Now, the Sumerians, when you look at all around the world, looking at the sky is the most important thing. It gives us our time and it gives us our weather conditions, right? And even though time is a made up format of numbers or whatever you want to call them, um, it still pinpoints, you know, what where we're at in the day. If we're in the morning, we're afternoon. If we're at this or that, whatever the case, it tells us, right? And the same thing with agriculture. It'll tell us when you can look in the sky and see when there's a storm coming. You can feel it in the air. You can taste it. Your senses will change and stuff like that. And the Sumerians, since they are known as the people who started bringing agriculture to as a massive scale, then guess what? They had to look at the sky. They had to go look at how the stars were moving. They had to record, okay? Because it's easy when you're hunter and gathering, you get what you go. I mean, you go. I mean, you just go out there and get whatever you can. You know what I'm saying? You hunt, you find, you scavenge, you do what you can with to survive, right?
Hmm.
And when you're doing agricultural needs, and you need to start remembering stuff, and you need to start, having records of stuff so you can always be on schedule. You're going to record it. So their uniform writing system or their pictographic script, hey, okay, when the sun gets to this location, I know that because it had to start like that. When the sun gets to this location, then I need to make sure that I need to plant my crops at this time because it's going to rain in about a week or it's going to rain in about 2 weeks or whatever. You know what I mean? And once I see that these clouds get over this mountain over here, I have 18 hours because you can see rain in the distance,
Yep.
I mean, you can actually see rain in the distance when it's coming. And you can say, I got 18 hours before it hits here. So let me go ahead and start planting my seeds now.
Hmm.
Different things. So the, they played a major part in recording the beginning of our time, basically. You know what I mean? And I know there was recordings before that. Trust me, there was plenty of recordings before that. But they recorded it in a form where it was for survival, like deep survival. Like everybody had to know this who were farmers, everybody who were, you know, people who were going to gather food. Because see, a lot of people don't understand this. We were hunters and gatherers.
Hmm.
Okay, we gathered berries, fruits, vegetables, nuts. Guess what? You had to know when those things were going to be, uh, you
In
know,
season. Also,
in
which
season.
berries weren't poisonous
So
too.
you already had an idea of when to plant your seeds, right? I mean, hunters and gatherers. I mean
Hmm.
that's the first idea right there. I know that these blueberries only grow at this certain time of frame. I know it starts raining at this time of frame. And it seems like they start growing around. It takes around this long to grow because I pass this location every time they go hunt, so I know an idea of what they what how long it takes. So they knew.
Hmm.
They just implemented it into a way where, okay, I need to record that this is happening at this time frame and this is how long it takes, and then it just got better over time.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
And
I
formed
mean,
into a culture.
exactly. You know, some people who became new farmers and stuff like that had to learn the hard way.
Hmm.
Just like today, some people don't want to take advice from a lot of people. They don't care. I
It's a
know that
great
when I
point.
tell I know people. I tell people to go say. I tell people every day, stop reading Zachariah Sitch and go read ETCSL. Actually, read the Modern Academia. The first thing they'll say is, "I don't believe Modern Academia." So you already have an idea of who you're going to believe. It
Yep.
doesn't matter what anybody else tells you. You don't believe Modern Academia, so anybody that tells you anything different than that, guess what? You're going to be on the gravy train on it. And guess what? You're riding that gravy train to hell because you don't know what the hell you're talking about.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Pretty much.
It's very that simple, man. It's that simple, bro. Listen to me. I don't care to be right. I just want to know. I don't have nothing else to do, man. Like I'm really like, bro. I literally take care of my kids all day. My wife goes to school. She goes to work. Okay, she's going to get her master's and she goes to work. I'm retired. I have a hard time sleeping at night. You know, I haven't been sleep. I haven't slept since let's see, 10 o'clock last night, and it's 10 o'clock in the morning now, and I'm gonna be up till maybe like 8, 9 o'clock, and I'm gonna sleep for an hour or two, and I'm gonna be back up again. But I don't sleep. I have a hard time sleeping. Like my restless leg syndrome gets really bad, so I can't sleep. So what I do is I'll read a book. I'll sit in my chair and wiggle my legs back and forth and all that, and I'll read and I'll read and I'll read. And there's different things for different ideas. So, you know, I'm not trying to sit here and be like, oh, I'm right about anything. It's just interesting.
Well,
That's all
imagine
it
how
is.
common that would have been in the back in the day, because you've seen combat, brother. So back in our
Yeah.
past, all the men, no doubt, war, farming, then the times of healing the loved ones, expressing their beliefs and culture, all that played a big part in our evolution for sure, you know, and no doubt would have influenced our religions, especially farming and astrology.
Yeah. So yeah, that's why I say, man, I'm not even tripping about that, bro. Like I just want to get the information out there because I'm reading. You know, I'm reading a lot of books, and I have a lot of information that a lot of people seem to don't know about. Like a lot of people would tell me, I'll ask people for the cuneiform identifier, the cuneiform tablet identifier, and they'll be like, "What is that?" And I'll be like, you know, from the British Museum or something, or
Hmm.
the Cuneiform Digital Library of Initiative. I can look this stuff up. Anybody can look it up. You know, we all have access to this. So when people say
Yes.
they don't believe modern academia, then I have to question where do you think these people like Zachariah says he got their information from? You know, they actually read some of these ancient texts. There's no doubt that he read some of these ancient texts. He just put a twist to it.
Yep.
And people don't understand that. And they're like, well,
That's
you
been
know,
going
he's
on for
right. He,
years, you know, as well. Like we've been doing it since religions began.
but people will say he's the closest truth, and they'll be like, well, I believe him more over the Bible. And I'll be like, there is no difference. There is no difference. The Bible has the same flood story as the Sumerians. Okay? You can't believe the Sumerians and not believe in the Bible because the Bible has the same thing. They'll say, well, they talk about one God. Yes, that version talks about one God.
Yep, that's correct. There's
That
many different
one version,
versions.
just like the Babylonians flipped all the gods and took Marduk as the being the supreme one God.
Yeah. Even in
He
ancient
took,
Egypt, there was a single god of Ra, Aten. So, you know, as well. But before that, it was
I
just an
think,
older aspect of Ra,
I
and there were
think, I
heaps of
think, I
gods.
think Ra and Marduk was the same. I'm pretty sure they were the
I think
same.
so. Or
I
influence as
think.
well.
Let me see. I think I wrote that down somewhere.
And there's
Let
some
me
that
see.
believe that Yahweh is Enki or El, even, you know.
I think I put that in my website somewhere. No, I can't remember. I can't remember. But I know Marduk. I can't remember where I put it, but I know Marduk has a relationship with a god in Egypt. I can't. Oh man, let me see.
I
I'm
know.
pretty
I sort of know what you're talking about, but I forgot which god. Because Marduk's isn't Marduk the one with the eagle head holding the bag? If I'm correct,
uh,
in the
uh,
Sumerian wise,
um, sure. I don't
and I
want to
guess
be
that would be
wrong
similar to
on.
Horus, maybe.
I don't want to be wrong.
Yeah, neither do I.
I don't want to be wrong. But dang man, I had it. I can't remember. I used to have a website that I used to have all that information on there, but I can't. I never save it for some reason. I don't know why.
So now there's also
Uh,
Ishtar as well that has similarities with one of the Sumerian goddesses as well. If I remember that right too.
but yes, like I said, a lot of people get the stuff mixed up because of just what they believe. You know, like
Mm.
and who they want to believe, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just some of that stuff is not always correct. You know what I mean?
Yes, and some of
Like,
it can be damaging too, as well. For sure.
yeah, exactly, exactly. So it's just interesting. That's why I say I always try to just figure out, you know, the 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 middle ground, I guess you could say.
One of the best places to be.
Yeah, because there's no reason to sit here and try to um how you say it make a claim. There's no
Yep,
reason to make a claim. I mess my You'll mess yourself up making a claim because once you make that claim, you got to stick with it basically.
yep.
Oh
Or
man,
admit that you made a
yeah,
mistake. No one wants to do that either. I've done it
yeah.
myself. I've made a mistake and I thought, yeah, I fucked up here.
Okay, so yeah, I did find it. So it's mesopotamiangods.com and Marduk overview. It said Marduk was in Babylonian, of course, but yeah, he was also Ra.
Okay, yeah, it's Ra's the one I think of. I fucking said
Yeah,
Horus.
Marduk. Yeah, I
Ra.
thought so. Yeah, I
Yeah.
thought it was. I thought it was certain with it was Raw too, but I couldn't make.
Yeah.
I had to make sure
I
about
knew it
that
was
because it's
something.
so. And the reason why I get so confused is because different translations will tell you different things. You know what I mean? So,
Yep.
but that was just from that website. So that's why I said that's what I learned from that website. That Marduk and Raw was the same. I'm not. I'm pretty sure Sitchin talks about it too in his books too. I just have to go. I have to verify by going through the books and looking. But I think that's where I learned it from first, and that's how I found that website. So I definitely heard that before plenty of times. But you know, the Sumerians that their agriculture was, if you look at their agriculture, how it came to be, they domesticated animals too. Same thing like everywhere else they domesticated animals for hunting and certain things like that. So there's no doubt that they was looking at the sky to make sure they knew when to plant stuff, and they already knew that because they were gatherers. You can't hunt, you can't gather berries in the middle of the winter. I mean, it's maybe in some places, yeah, but
Yeah, winter berries, I
uh,
guess, but yeah, depending on
yeah,
the
but
types.
yeah, depending on the types, but for the most part, you're not gonna be able to find berries all the time.
No, especially in the desert.
Yeah, in the desert, exactly. So that's what I'm saying. So like, it just depends. So
100%, brother, 100%. It's actually been pretty good. And I guess I've got one last question, bro.
all
Um,
right.
for someone looking to study into Sumerian history of their gods, where would you suggest for them to start?
Well, I would always start with uh, Samuel Noah Kramer and Andrew George. I mean, there were others, uh, but I would start with them. And the only reason why I would start with them is Samuel Noah Kramer. He has a lot of good books out there, and his books are available online for free. Okay, so you can start there if you don't have the funds. You can start there and get an idea, and he gives you a really good description and an idea of who these individuals are, right? and he goes into the history of the Sumerians also, so you can get an idea of them also. And he's also quoted a lot throughout, modern academia. People still hold his work as one of the best. So I would start with Samuel Noah Corey, Andrew George, only because of the Epic of Gilgamesh. He has a um, uh, new translation out. Let me see. I want to see. Let's see something real quick to make sure. Yep, he's still, yeah, he has the Penguin Classics out there. I guess that's where they have a version of that on there, and they have
Yeah, that's
another
what I
version.
have.
Yeah, the Penguin Classic
Yeah.
one. So they have that. So yeah, they have all that stuff available for everybody. And then I would check out the electronic text corpus of Sumerian literature. The ancient literature of Sumer, the book. And the only reason why I say that is because that actually gives you the uh, the, um, the text that was recorded in that time frame. It gives you the actual text, so you don't have to go and uh, read some random person's translation.
Yeah, cheers for all that, Tyrone. And that's all my questions answered now. Thank you so
Okay,
much for
word,
that. I'll
word, word.
stop recording on my end.
Yeah, I am too now. So